Drama awaits, only on Echoes of Love. The adventure begins with the discovery of a mysterious murder of a man who was killed brutally, his tongue cut out, and his body thrown on a riverbank. Officer Choi arrives at the crime scene to examine the body, where Detective Kim meets him and tells him that the victim's name is Yoon-yu, 43 years old, and that the cause of death is strangulation. Choi asks her how she knew his name when he wasn't carrying a phone or a wallet, and Kim explains that Yoon-yu was wearing an electronic ankle monitor because he had been released from prison 8 months earlier after serving time for sexual assault. Choi approaches the body and asks the investigation team if they noticed anything strange. Investigator Bae tells him that the victim has an injection mark on his neck and that his tongue was cut out. Kim adds that they haven't found the tongue yet. Choi orders them to examine the victim's back, and everyone is shocked when they discover that the victim's tongue was placed inside his rectum. Then the story rewinds to October 15, 2001, where we see Choi examining a similar crime scene. As time passes, the police find 4 more victims who were killed in the same way, until they finally identify the serial killer responsible for the deaths of 5 people. It turns out to be a woman named Shin, who was nicknamed by the media the mantis because that insect is known for eating the male's head after mating. All of Shin's victims were men accused of abusing their wives or other women, or even of child abuse cases. In the present day, we see Shin inside a luxurious prison room, listening to the news and learning that the criminal who killed the most recent victim is trying to imitate her style of murders from over 23 years ago. She decides to send a letter to Detective Choi. The next day, Choi meets a young officer named Cha, gives him the case file, and asks for his help because he believes Cha is much smarter than he is. But Cha tells him that he's having trouble at work, can't focus, and needs to go home early. Choi begs him to at least read the case file, and Cha finally agrees. After reading it, Cha concludes that the murderer is the type who enjoys torture. At that moment, Choi decides to handcuff Cha inside the car, assuring him that he'll let him go but first needs him to listen. Cha is confused and asks why he's doing this, and soon realizes that the criminal is copying the murders committed by his own mother, Shin. Choi tells him to finish his work and take a day off because Shin has agreed to help them in the case, but only on one condition, that she speaks with him personally. He also informs Cha that the director has approved her request and his participation in the team. Cha gets angry and demands that Choi remove the cuffs. Choi tells him that the next murder will involve decapitation, and the one after that will be drowning, and if they fail to catch the killer, the murders will only increase. Cha becomes even angrier, breaks the car handle, and shouts at Choi for asking him to meet Shin. Choi calmly tells him that he's a difficult person by nature, and that if he'd only put his hand in his pocket, he would have found the key to the cuffs. Then he advises him to think about it seriously. The next morning, Cha wakes up to discover that a new murder has taken place in a shipping company's warehouse, and the victim was beheaded. It becomes clear that the criminal is determined to imitate Shin's methods. Memories come back to Cha of the time when Choi met him as a child and advised him to become a police officer, to save 5 people instead of the 5 his mother had killed. Cha goes to meet Choi, and on their way to see Shin, he asks what she requested in exchange for her help. Choi replies that she asked to speak with him and to be transferred to another location so she could meet them outside prison. Cha asks about security measures, and Choi assures him that all precautions have been taken. They then arrive at the house where Shin is being held. From the outside, the house looks ordinary, but in reality, it's a detention facility operated by the National Intelligence Agency. Before entering, Cha asked Choi to keep everything that happens a secret, because he doesn't want anyone to know that Shin is his mother, especially his wife, as he wouldn't be able to live without her if she ever found out the truth. He enters nervously, trying to hide his emotions. When Shin sees him, she asks if he is her son. He explains that he's a detective from the Major Crimes Unit, there to interrogate her since she agreed to cooperate with them. He points to the case file and asks if she reviewed it. Shin notices the mark of a ring on his finger and realizes he's married, so she asks if he has children. He controls his emotions and tells her to keep the discussion focused on the case because he didn't come to have a family reunion. Shin opens the murder case file from the warehouse incident and tells them that the person imitating her crimes worked hard to become like her, but she sees clear differences. The killer decapitated the victim with a single axe blow, whereas she used a saw, because it caused her victims greater suffering. She insists that she's certain the copycat knows the pleasure of using a saw and concludes that he must be a man since using an axe requires great physical strength. When they ask for more details, she replies that everything she said was deduced from the photos in the report and that she can't offer more than that. She asks if they have other photos, but Choi advises her not to strain herself and to give them whatever she can based on the current images, since that's all they have for now. He tells her that the killer used her method and has already murdered 2 people. Shin asks him to bring her more photos next time, promising that she will help them. Cha asks why she was smiling while looking at the photos. It seems to him that the images brought back memories. Choi tries to stop him from talking, but he continues, saying that the photos made her happy and allowed her to feel the scent of blood again. She tells him that the smell of blood isn't bad for her, and recounts how, when she was giving birth to him, the doctors had to cut her open. In the middle of the operation, the anesthesia started to wear off, but she endured the pain without moving because she was afraid for him. Since then, she's loved the smell of blood, the same smell she sensed when her son was born. Cha tries to stay composed and tells her that as a police officer, he meets many criminals and doesn't care about their pasts or memories. At that moment, Choi steps in and asks them both to leave, assuring Shin that they'll return once they have new photos. She then asks them to let her visit the crime scene, saying she remembered something and wants to confirm it herself. After they leave, Choi says she's only stalling and trying to use the time to relive her old crimes, but admits they have no choice but to comply with all her demands. He explains that when he arrested her 23 years ago, he only had one piece of evidence, and it wasn't strong. The country was hosting the World Cup at that time, and there was massive political pressure to find the serial killer threatening public safety. So he decided to cling to that weak evidence and arrest her. She had looked at him mockingly back then, as if she already knew this day would come. Because he lacked solid proof, he had to make her confess, and she knew that well. That's why they agreed to all her requests and provided her with a private cell equipped with everything she wanted. Choi confirms that when she makes a deal, she always honors it, which is why he decided to grant her request to visit the crime scene. The next day, Shin arrives at the scene with Cha and Choi. She plays the same music the murderer was listening to and starts humming along. It turns out to be the same music she used to listen to while committing her murders 23 years earlier. Cha stops the music and asks her to talk, and Shin tells him that the killer moved the mirrors to this place. Cha realizes that the murderer wanted to make the victim suffer even more. She confirms to him that he used the same method as hers, and then she begins to imitate the way she cut off the victim's head while laughing calmly, explaining to him what the criminal would do if he wanted to copy the same crime. Haichan realizes that he will only have the evidence the police obtained and the photos that were published in the newspapers. She tells him that the crime scene photo was published in only one newspaper, then she leaves him and walks out, and he tries to understand what she was trying to say. She replies that that is the work of the police, and that she is nothing more than a criminal. He asks her to send him the photo that was published in the paper, and discovers that the photo is reversed, and that the crime scene appears in it differently than in reality. He understands that the criminal must have seen the court or investigation records and did not rely on what was printed in the newspapers. Then he and his team begin searching for the person who managed to access the court records, and they find out that a lawyer said the file disappeared from his office. He goes with Kim to meet the lawyer, who confirms to them that all case files are still in his office except for Shin's file. They ask him if anyone he knows entered his office and left, and he tells them that he often leaves the office during meetings. Kim asks if anyone has recently tried to approach him in an unreasonable way, and he says that while he was building his house he went to the district office to finish some paperwork, where a young man named Seo met him and said he had been a child at the orphanage the lawyer used to visit 30 years ago. Then suddenly, without warning, Seo decided to visit him at the office. The investigator asks him what made him remember that incident, and the lawyer explains that when he went to the orphanage and asked about the young man, he discovered there was no child by that name at the orphanage. In the evening, the investigator and his team go to surveil Seo's house, and they discover that he really does work at the district office and that he grew up in an orphanage. He contacts his team and asks them not to alert Seo and that no one should move until they confirm he has entered the house. After a few moments, Seo arrives, notices unfamiliar cars in front of his house, and decides to flee. Chow and his team try to pursue him, but they fail to catch him. Afterwards, the team enters Seo's house and discovers that he keeps Shin's case file and records related to many people, including the lawyer and the prison guard where Shin is held. Suddenly Kim is shocked when she finds a file about her and discovers that Seo had been keeping information on all of them. Suddenly Bae finds new records and calls Chow to come see them. He opens a safe to find inside a set of letters that had been sent to Seo from inside the prison. He goes to the house where Shin is detained and confronts her with those letters, accusing her of helping Seo carry out his crimes. She replies coldly and asserts that she never sent him any letters, then asks if he has proof that she wrote those letters. She mocks him for calling himself a police officer when he has no proof. In the morning, they discover that Seo was the one sending the letters to himself and that he is a coward afraid to commit his crimes, so he deluded himself into thinking she was ordering him. The investigator tells him that, through the medication Seo had been taking, he discovered Seo is a psychiatric patient with schizophrenia, an illness that causes constant delusions and delirium, and he also discovers that Seo had an appointment with his psychiatrist a month ago that he did not attend, realizing that this was when he committed his first crime. At that moment, Kim calls them and tells them she managed to unlock Seo's computer, and they discover he had superimposed his photo onto the picture of another family member, and Kim sees the car number visible in the picture and asks them to obtain the owner's registration details. He orders them to prepare to go to that family's address. Meanwhile, Seo has taken a mother and her 2 children hostage and is pretending to be their father so the mother will play along and protect her children, asking them to treat him like their father. But suddenly the child becomes upset and screams that he is not his father. Seo asks where the child's real father is and tells him to be quiet. Then Seo suspects there is someone else in the house, but the mother assures him there is no one else. He becomes enraged, accuses her of lying, and says she thinks he is crazy because he is sure there is someone with them in the house. Suddenly the child's screaming escalates, and Seo takes him to the bathroom to punish him and drowns him in the bathtub. At that moment, Chow and his team arrive and manage to arrest Seo and rescue the mother and her 2 children. Chow notices Seo looking at him with strange stares, and at that time Kim enters and tells them they have not found the father yet. Afterwards we see Bae telling his colleagues that Seo is a half-brother, and that his mother abandoned him after his birth, which is why he grew up in an orphanage, while his mother married another man and had a child named Tae-suk with him. It becomes clear that Seo saw himself as more entitled to his brother's life, and that is why he decided to detain his brother's wife and children. Suspicion begins that Seo is the one who committed the river murder and the warehouse murder, so Chow orders them to focus on him and pressure him to confess. Kim enters with Chow to interrogate Seo, who deliberately provokes her and reminds her of her son who had autism and whom she abandoned in her custody, causing her to lose control and try to strike him, but Chow intervenes and calms her, advising her not to fall into the trap Seo set for her. Kim leaves and Chow continues the interrogation, noticing that Seo knows Chow is Shin's son and that he is very fond of her and knows she is alive inside prison because he managed to reach the prison guard. Chow tries to make a deal with him to make him confess and asks whether Tae-suk is alive or dead, but Seo continues talking about Shin and asks Chow what he thinks of her. Chow affirms that he considers her a criminal. Seo bursts into laughter and tells him that in the past there was a child of about 10 years old whose father bound his legs until the bones of his calves showed, tortured, and burned him, so Shin decided to intervene to save him and killed the father, and he wonders how Chow can call her a criminal after what she did. Chow tries to extract any information from him but fails because Seo insists on meeting Shin. After that, Choi decides to take Seo to meet her. Shin begins trying to lure him into confessing his crimes and asks him why he tried to imitate her. He insists that he did it to show the world what she had done for them. Shin continues speaking with him until she is sure that he did not kill anyone. Seo becomes agitated and insists that he killed Tae-suk, but she tells him that it is impossible because he is a coward and that his mother abandoned him for that reason. Seo becomes more enraged and attempts to attack her, and she discovers she had been wearing a microphone in her clothes and that all his conversation with her was recorded. His anger increases and he threatens to tell everyone that she is still alive and that her son is a police officer, and he vows to reveal this information to Chow's wife, at which point Shin loses control and tries to kill him. At that moment Chow, Choi, and the guard enter and rescue Seo from her hands, and Shin tells Chow that Seo must die because he knows everything. At that moment Seo regains consciousness and tries to escape, and when he discovers the doors are locked, he begins threatening them with the handgun he snatched from the guard, but he hears the voices racing in his head and loses concentration, and Chow approaches him and tries to persuade him to drop the weapon. Seo attempts suicide. He is transported to the hospital, and Choi comes out to tell Chow that Seo is still alive but has suffered a skull fracture and will need a period of rest, assuring him that he will remain under heavy guard. Chow begins to consider the fate of Tae-suk, especially since Seo had told Shin he killed him. He returns to his office and begins with his team to examine Seo's computer, discovering that Seo kept many photos of the hospital where his mother left him, and Chow suspects that Seo had deluded himself into replacing his life with Tae-suk's life and perhaps had held him in the hospital where he was raised. When he and his team arrive at the hospital, they receive a report that Seo may have attempted to imitate Shin's method in committing the third crime, so he orders them to search for Tae-suk in any place that contains water. After a period of searching, they manage to find Tae-suk imprisoned inside a washing machine. When they emerge, he is unconscious, and they try to save him, insisting that they cannot let him die. After many attempts, they succeed in rescuing Tae-suk, then he goes to Shin to thank her for helping them. She reflects that Seo possesses a lot of information about her and mentions that she heard the gunshot when he attempted suicide. He asks if she is worried about him, because he has just learned that one of the conditions of her confession is to help the government change his name so that no one knows he is her son, and that Choi personally supervises his upbringing. She continues speaking, making him understand that Seo knew everything about her, even her wife's name, and might even know the address, which unsettles him because she refuses to acknowledge her feelings toward him. He offers her the coffee he brought and then steps away. The next morning, he goes to examine a new crime scene and discovers that the victim is a university professor named Ju, who has no criminal record and lives alone while his family resides in another city. He loses his composure because the criminal declares himself free, unreachable, and that none of his victims could be saved. The following day, he tries to solve the puzzle of the latest case and finds that the criminal took the victim's phone, a common trait in all three crimes. Kim explains that the criminal might take phones because they contain information that could expose him. Meanwhile, Ji notices that Yu's phone has been accessed and its location identified. He and his team reach the location shown on the map, finding a nearly abandoned house. However, his attention is drawn to a desk resembling the one his father gave him as a child to practice drawing. They also notice a container with water and a ball, which surprises him because the place is abandoned yet contains water. His memory recalls that the ball is similar to the one that fell from him into a well as a child while playing with his father. He asks if anyone saw the well. Since the village is old and lacks a water supply, someone must have brought water from a well. They find the well, lift its cover, and are shocked to find a corpse inside with a message mocking them for finally discovering the body. They remove it carefully. Forensic examination reveals the corpse is that of a programmer named Sik, who disappeared 3 months ago and worked at the company archiving old crime files, including Shin's case. He realizes the criminal exploited access to secret data and decides to visit his old house, descending into the well where he discovers human bones. He understands that this was Shin's first committed crime. Next to the body, he finds Shin's wedding ring and recalls that it is her father's body. Shocked, he begins laughing hysterically, then goes to Shin to show her the ring and asks if the body in the well is her father's. She confirms that she did it and considers it the best action of her life. Chow collapses emotionally, telling her she is talking about her father. She replies that she did it to preserve her own life. Chow accuses her of audacity, insisting that it is not a valid excuse. Shin recounts that her father was an alcoholic, and on the night she killed him, he returned home drunk, accused her of cheating with mine workers, and doubted the child's paternity. When she defended herself, he attacked her violently, and she grabbed a sewing scissors to protect her son, stabbing her father. She explains that he suffered only a minor wound and lost consciousness from the shock. Chow accuses him of lying, since he recalls that she loved him and that he had built her a private desk where she played with him using a ball. Shin clarifies that she only played with him when he was sober, which was rare. Chow asks why she didn't admit to killing her father during investigations, and she answers simply that no one asked, he himself had forgotten. She explains that killing a person is easy, but hiding the crime is difficult. When she killed her father, she understood this well and was lucky that rain washed away all evidence that night. Since then, she felt at peace and able to live. Shin admits she enjoyed the smell of blood and reveals that after killing her father, she murdered 5 more victims. She tells him that after killing her father, she should have cut his limbs and head before throwing him into the well, but she lacked the experience because it was her first time. Chow becomes furious and tries to strangle her to stop her speech. She confesses to all the crimes she admitted, including her father's murder, attempting to pressure him to kill her, but he steps back and shouts under the psychological stress she exerts. Afterwards, he visits his grandfather, who begins recounting information about his mother. He discovers that his mother died young and was rarely close to him, appearing only occasionally. They talk, and he learns that his mother wished to leave home by any means and decided to do so when she reached maturity. He searched for her extensively and discovered she had married his father. He also learns that his father was known as the worst man in the city and always suspicious of her. Though he saw her, he could not help her, and his worry led him to watch over her from afar sometimes. He is shocked to learn that he was present the night she killed her father and becomes agitated. They understand that he should have made her surrender or report to the police, because after killing her father, she murdered 5 more people. He admits he wanted to do so but could not because she was his daughter and he did not want to be responsible for her imprisonment and ruined life. He realizes he has continuously cared for her to atone for his guilt and agreed to care for other children but feels he will never be able to fully atone. He asks if anyone else knows about the crimes his mother committed, as the new criminal is copying all her crimes. He confirms he told no one, considered her dead, and buried her. Later, he visits his mother, shows her photos of neighbors, and asks if she remembers any. She points to one who was also an alcoholic. He asks if that man could be the one imitating her crimes. Shin tells him that the neighbor had a son named Minji, abandoned young by his father, who suffered a harsh childhood and spent much time at their house, often harming himself. When she spoke with his father, she saw Minji intentionally hurting himself to seek attention. Chow remarks that this information is insufficient. Shin confirms she saw Minji injure himself and that he saw her. When news of her crimes spread, he surely understood that she used anesthetic injections and realized she came to kill Minji's father. Meanwhile, they reach the village where the graves of her mother's friend, Ari, are located, to confirm she truly died, since they heard that her grandfather told him not to meet her again. Her friend tells her that she learned their house was nearby, so she decides to investigate, entering the house and discovering it has been abandoned for years. At that time, Minji's father appeared and tried to attack his friend, so he tried to control his emotions and gave him some money to go buy a drink. Suddenly, Minji appeared and politely apologized to them for his father's behavior, returning the money to them. His phone rang, and he realized he needed to return to his father to give him the medicine. Minji went, took the medicine, and began to get angry at his father for embarrassing him in front of people. When he noticed his father was afraid of him, he hugged him and apologized. Then he went to Lee and told him that he had found a picture of his mother-in-law but could not give it to her because it was the only copy he had. Lee decided to take a photo of it with her phone, and Minji suggested delivering it to them. His girlfriend agreed. Minji arrived with Leal at the house and was surprised to see her. He began to scold her for going to the village without informing him. Minji tried to remind him of himself, but he ignored his words. Feeling embarrassed, he decided to leave, then stopped and said he remembered. Choi called and informed him that Minji was at the house and asked him to come take the numbers of his car. He went out and asked Lee why she had gone to the village. He confirmed that she had been on their way and passed by, and then she went to join Minji and his girlfriend. He joined them, appearing disturbed by Minji's presence. Suddenly, Minji began telling them about the mole cricket case that had occurred in their village. He said that a young woman in her 20s had killed 5 people, but the police had hidden her identity and photograph. He believed that all her victims deserved to die because they were guilty, and they were affected, thinking that this did not justify the crime. Minji laughed and said that he was undoubtedly more knowledgeable than them because he worked in the police, and he began telling them about Shin. He said that she had treated Minji as if he were her son, and he had loved her very much, but unfortunately, they lost her suddenly in the incident. He became tense because Minji was recounting all these details despite knowing that Shin had not died in the incident. Afterward, he went to Minji's investigation office and discovered that he had been monitoring him and his wife all along. He was shocked when he saw a model designer narrating all the crimes Shin had committed and reporting them to Minji. He decided to attack him and accuse him of killing the new victims, asking Minji if he could meet their mother and speak with her regarding the case. At the same time, she arrived at the hospital and entered Seo's room, noticing that he was shaking and asking someone to forgive him. Meanwhile, she was able to attack the officer guarding her and managed to escape. At the same time, Minji was arrested and interrogated. They asked him where he had been on the day of the latest crime, but he easily proved that his co-workers were directly accompanying him. He asked them to allow him to meet his mother. He became angry and stated that he would not move from his place until the absence excuse he provided was verified. We returned to see Kim trying to understand why Minji had attempted to kill him. Minji attacked him, and he managed to escape from the hospital. Kim was informed, and he quickly arrived, beginning a search with him for Seo. When he saw him, he tried to flee again, but suddenly a car appeared and hit him. Chow approached, trying to reassure him that the ambulance would arrive soon. He told Seo that he understood he wanted to get rid of him because of his relationship with Shin and threatened that he would reveal it to his wife. He said that he wanted to save him and did not want him to die. Seo told him that he resembled his mother a lot and that he was jealous of him. Suddenly, his condition worsened, and he died. In the morning, she arrived home and met Lee, apologizing because she had believed she was dead. She told him that Shin considered her truly dead. At the same time, she discovered that Shin had escaped and began to suspect that she had killed Seo. He hurried back to the house, entered frightened, and met Lee, telling him that his mother had told her everything. He was shocked and feared she had discovered the truth. She explained that she had told him that Shin considered her dead since he left and his father disappeared. She assured him that she had only come to check on the girl who had always supported him. He felt reassured and asked her to leave with him. She tried to convince him to sit with her, but he refused and insisted that she go out. Afterward, he decided to release Minji due to the strong absence excuses he presented, drove him to his office, and asked him not to move or travel without informing them. He told him that time was a very strange thing, as his father, who had beaten him as a child, was now forced to care for him. He advised him to also take care of his mother. He realized that his mother had killed because she enjoyed it, not to protect weak women and children as she had claimed. He advised him to forget her and confirmed that his mother truly loved him. He was surprised that he did not want to believe it. He understood that no matter what she did, she would always be his mother. He asked him to get out of the car. He said he resembled her very much. He left angry and asked what he had said. Minji confirmed that he deliberately portrayed their mother as evil. He said that it was true, but Minji responded that she had not been like that with them. He advised him to admit that he missed her because she was his mother. Chow reacted and confirmed that he had no sympathy for her and did not miss her, advising him to stop glorifying her and wake up from his illusions. Afterward, they arrived, and when they opened it, they discovered a phone belonging to one of the victims. He went out to inform his team. Suddenly, he received a call from an unknown person asking him to deliver the phone. At the same time, Chow was shocked to discover that he had been cooperating with Shin all this time and hiding it from them. Cho tried to justify it by saying they had kept it secret, as any media leak would ruin all their plans. Kim asked him if he was hiding anything else, and he assured her he was not. She decided to inform him of what they had discovered. She told him that they had found an account on a dating app for a persona named Joy, and that the 4 victims who were killed had been following her. The next victim could be any of her followers. Minji called and asked if he knew Joy. Minji explained that she was connected to the case and that he had been monitoring her on the dating app, knowing she was interested in the comic stories she posted. He went with his team to the house where she was being held. She received a call from the killer confirming that he was imitating her because he wanted everyone to understand the reason for his actions. Shin said that adding mirrors had been successful because she was thinking about torturing the victims, but she had never thought of making them see themselves and feel pain. The killer spoke to the investigators, assuring them that they would not be able to track him. Shin asked him for updates, and the killer told her that today, when the last scene ended, someone's life would end with it. He confirmed that she was his inspiration for all his crimes and ended the call. His team began analyzing the killer's words and noted that the last scene had significance. They asked to check the professions of Joy's followers and discovered an opera singer named Sujin who had a performance today. He arrived at the opera house and began monitoring the prisoners and everyone around him with his team. At the same time, Minji decided to contact Joy, imagining he was helping Cha, and asked her to meet him. We see that he was monitoring the performance until it ended and asked his team to reach the prisoners. Suddenly, he disappeared and left the theater without changing his clothes, going out to search for him. He received a call from Min-jae but decided to ignore it. He sent a message informing him that Joy would meet him within an hour and asked him and his team to come arrest her. At that time, Min-jae was shocked that someone had hacked his account and sent a repeated message claiming that he had acted like Sean and should be dealt with accordingly. Suddenly, an unknown person appeared, attacked him, and beat him unconscious. He arrived at Min-jae's office and was shocked to see him tortured and bound in a strange way. He approached and tried to ask who the perpetrator was, but Min-jae lost consciousness again. Shin arrived at the crime scene and tried to find any evidence leading them to the killer. She noticed that he was in a hurry and acting recklessly, which was out of character. By chance, she saw a painting Min-jae had made. He told her that he had been talking about his memories with her when she used to go with them to the beach, and she saw that she and Min-jae were in the painting. She told him that she was with him in the painting. At that time, Min-jae was watching them from afar, making sure that he was jealous of him and wishing that he would care for him the way he cared for her. At the same time, he received a message from Min-jae asking him to go to the office because he would be meeting Joy. Shin told him that he had been trying to help him until the very end, so Shin felt reassured that the killer would contact her again. She decided to help him catch him, and he promised her that he would follow all her orders and think as she thinks. A little later, the killer called Shin. She mocked him because the previous crime had not resembled her style or his, and he confirmed that he was merely a pale imitation of her. She ended the call. Seconds later, the killer called her again, opened the camera, and, wearing a mask, told her that next time he would be more careful. Shin asked if he had prepared the spoon he would use. It was known that the 4th crime Shin had committed involved using a spoon to burn the victim. The killer confirmed to her that he had prepared everything. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The camera moved from the killer's hand, and he decided to end the call with Shin. Jian began analyzing the video and managed to determine the hotel where the killer was from the layout of the room. The killer returned and called Shin while abducting the victim he intended to kill. Shin tried to buy time until Chao's team arrived. Chao and his team reached the hotel and discovered that many rooms identical to the killer's were spread across 10 floors. Kim suggested activating the alarms to save the victim because the killer had begun torturing her, but he refused. If the alarms were triggered, the killer would have a chance to escape. After a while, he remembered the room number where his mother had committed a similar crime 23 years ago and decided to move quickly to reach it. At the same time, he noticed the killer was about to kill the victim. He decided to activate the alarm, and the killer was cut off from the call with Shin and fled with the other hotel guests, who had left their rooms terrified by the alarm sound. He tried to reach the killer and followed him into the garage. The killer appeared and attacked him, but he managed to escape. He then went to meet Shin and handed her the file comparing Shin's crime with the one the killer was trying to imitate, asking her to study it carefully and inform him if she noticed anything strange. While doing that, Shin began humming a song. Chow remembered that the killer had hummed the same song and quickly told her that this meant the killer had been present at the crime scene when Shin committed her crime, as she had not mentioned the song during the investigation. They confirmed that the victim the killer had murdered had been stabbed differently from the original crime and began to suspect that the killer had been hiding at the crime scene all this time. When Shin had completed her crime, he had decided to stab the victim out of intense hatred for her. He told her that the victim had a wife and a young son. Shin realized that he always met the child named Kong and often carried a dead cat as if it were a toy. His entire body was covered in wounds and burns on his nostrils. She remembered that the child had been tortured by his father and was always confined in the bathroom. She deduced that he had witnessed his mother kill his father and fulfilled the wish he had been longing for. That was why he admired her and wanted to know everything about her and her husband. He told her that Lee might be in danger and contacted Choi, asking him to send urgent protection to Lee. Over time, they discovered that the killer had suffered from gender identity disorder since childhood, which had motivated his father's abuse. When he grew up, he underwent surgery, became a girl, and assumed the name Joy. He asked his team to search all medical centers and cosmetic clinics to find any lead to Joy. They managed to reach the nurse who had worked at the clinic where the surgery had been performed on the child Kong, who had transformed into a girl. He returned to the office excited and shared the news, asking them to help locate the doctor who had performed the surgery. However, he noticed that none of them seemed interested in his words. Kim decided to confront him firmly, asking him to leave their team because he had promised not to hide anything but was concealing very important information. He tried to convince them that they were close to catching the killer, but they realized they had already discovered the killer and no longer needed him, as he was leading the team astray. Accusing him of disregarding the victims' lives led to a confrontation among them. At the same time, he arrived. Kim told him they did not want to see their team and asked him to choose between them and himself. He was shocked when he discovered that the hotel manager, the latest victim, had died. He returned home frustrated and decided to admit that the serial killer Min Ji had been talking about was his mother, Shin. Shock appeared on Lee's face, and she stepped back. Chow intervened and reassured her that he knew the matter was terrifying. She told him she was shocked because she had met her mother and did not know she was a criminal and detested her. He said he also felt hatred. She reassured him that she did not mean it and apologized, and he understood that she did not want to have children for fear of passing on her murderous mother's genes. Later, she attended the funeral with Lee and her friend RM, along with Jae-min's father's agitation. They asked who would pay compensation. A funeral director entered and asked about the deceased's relation to the young man, who replied that he was his older brother. He left with Lee, and they sat on the beach. He showed her the painting Jay had made of his mother, astonished at how he saw her this way, believing her to be a criminal, and told her that he had abandoned investigating the case. They returned with Lee to her friend's house, and she agreed to go back with him, saying she would fetch her belongings. At the same time, he received word from Choi that the doctor who had performed the surgery had been killed and that all files in his office had been stolen. He confirmed to her that he would not assist in the case as long as he was not part of the team and asked her to return quickly if she wanted to reach the killer. At that time, Lee was downstairs, excited to tell him that she was pregnant. However, when she noticed he would be returning to work, she held back and asked him to go to work, saying he would come pick her up later. The next day, he went to the office and met Kim, who reminded them that when he joined them, he had said the skilled officer would prove his competence in investigations. She asked him to prove his competence to resolve their disputes. Shortly after, they received a call from Kong. She began provoking him and realized he was not like her because he had killed the doctor purely for the enjoyment of killing. She learned that he was the one who had killed the cat he always carried as a child. He confirmed to her that she was not an angel and should have been killed after her father was murdered. She understood that she should thank him because he had prevented men from learning her truth and the truth about her son. He confirmed that her son was living happily thanks to him and asked her to watch as he destroyed everything she loved. She regretted not killing him after he had killed her father. When she ended the call, she was surprised because she said he was happy thanks to him. She asked how he knew Lee, and he recalled that Aram had introduced him to Lee. He quickly mobilized his team to go to Aram's house. When he tried to call Lee, she decided to turn off her phone. They reached Aram's house and found they were not there. He sent a message to Lee, asking her to stay away from Aram by any means when she saw the message. At that time, Aram stood at a gas station and opened Lee's phone, shocked by the calls and messages. When she saw the last message, she claimed she had entered the bathroom to avoid Aram and called Chob to tell him she was at the gas station. He asked her to escape quickly and go to a crowded place, reassuring her that he was on the way and close to reaching her. Suddenly, she noticed Lee escaping and reached him at an abandoned house. He spoke with her, assuring her that the police would soon arrive, and she tried to control her nerves. At that moment, a police officer arrived and took her to the station. Aram entered and shocked the officer with her car, killing his colleague. She then left him for Lee because she was pregnant. Aram revealed her true identity, saying her real name was Kong, and hid her before reaching Lee's location. At that moment, he discovered that Aram had killed the officers and left him a pregnancy test to let him know that Lee was pregnant. She called him, knowing he was with her, and he began threatening her. Aram realized that everything that had happened was a game she had drawn him into. In the morning, Aram called and told her she was in her hideout, showing her the tools she had used to kill cats, dogs, and humans. Over time, as she confirmed that she had always wanted to open the belly of a pregnant being, Shin realized that she was no longer a child, and if she wanted revenge, it would be direct. She agreed to her proposal and told her she accepted switching roles in 5 hours. Afterward, she arrived at the place where she would be handed over to Aram. Meanwhile, she informed her team that she had received orders from the director to close the case today at any cost, even if it meant killing Shin and Aram. On the other hand, she used Shin's tracking device and ensured that they would reach her after Aram received her. At the same time, she received a call from Aram, instructing her to go to the mountain with her mother and make sure she was safe, leaving her weapon behind. She locked the handcuffs on Shin and handed her the key, then arrived with her mother at the abandoned mine to hand her over to Aram. She advised her mother that once she confirmed Lee was safe, she should begin shooting at Aram. Upon arrival, signs of exhaustion appeared on her, and she collapsed. Aram fled into the forest and ordered the tracking device to be removed. At that moment, Kim appeared and tried to kill her. She was shocked to find that her gun wasn't working, but she managed to shoot her in the arm. Aram seized Shin's weapon and escaped into the forest, reaching her hideout there. She began telling her that she had saved her life by killing her father, who had tortured her and considered her a devil. She confirmed that they were similar, isolated and shunned by the world, and asked her not to betray one another. Shin realized that Aram had taken herself when she chose the easier path to reach victims through the dating app, which was why the police were tracking her. She told her that the police were on their way because they had undoubtedly followed the blood trails she had left. She explained that if Jay brought her to express love, time was not on their side. If she brought her to kill her, this was her last chance. Aram placed the knife on Shin's neck and assured her she feared nothing. She bit her hand and threw the knife to the ground. Aram returned and tried to hit her with a hammer, but Shin managed to free herself and stab her. As she began moving around the hideout, Aram entered in a hysterical state, delighted that Shin would torture her before death. Shin returned, covered her, and told her she would be lucky if the police arrived early to save her. Aram tried to convince her to escape through a passage only she knew, but she decided to exit via the main corridor. She threw her a box and asked her to open it. When she did, she found a picture and told her she knew the truth. Shortly after, the hideout was reached. Suddenly, he appeared and attacked him, telling him that Shin had escaped through a secret passage. He assured her that even if the police killed him, they would reach her. She tried to stab him. At that moment, Kim arrived and saved him. He attacked her and stabbed her, but before stabbing her again, he decided to shoot her and approached Kim to check on her. She asked him to move quickly to reach Shin before she escaped. At night, he decided to go to RM's house. Despite an arrest warrant against him, he chose to enter because Kim had instructed him to do so. He entered RM's house and discovered a secret room containing a computer. Upon opening it, he saw records from the psychiatrist who had assessed Shin when she entered prison. He discovered that Shin had been sexually harassed by her father as a child and had burned down the house and her mother inside when she discovered his crime. He was shocked that the man who had raised him and cared for many children like him turned out to be an abuser and criminal. At the same time, she went to her father's house, deciding to take revenge and kill him. Her father tried to beg for forgiveness, insisting that over the past years he had done good deeds to atone for his sins. She decided to kill him and approached him, placing the knife on his neck. At that moment, her grandfather arrived and threatened her with a gun to lower the knife, asking her to kill him because she was a devil. He was furious because all his life he had believed her mother was a devil. His grandfather explained that he had done it to protect him and threatened that if he did not remain silent, he would be shot. He pleaded with his mother to leave with him without releasing her bloodied hands. He later discovered that his grandfather had sexually harassed the child he had been asked to care for. He tried to kill him, but Shin intervened to prevent him from becoming like her and decided to sedate him. Shortly after, he regained consciousness and discovered that his mother had set the place on fire with his father inside. He rushed in and saved her. After Shin regained consciousness, she reached out for him to hold her and return her to prison, but he refused, telling her he would go to the hospital and she might come with him. He advised her to forget and continue her life because they were different, even if bound by blood, confirming that she loved his differences from her. 2 years later, she was in prison when she suddenly heard on the news that the police had found a severely mutilated body in the mountains. Shin was shocked to learn that he was the one who had killed. At that time, the guard arrived and informed Shin that Jay was visiting. Shin went out and discovered that Kim had come to help them solve the Choi case mystery. Here we reach the end of the video. Subscribe for more.